And the hard thing is we don't realize that, like, unless we create the story in their head, they'll create their own story. So what we're doing is we're actually narrating whatever the hour or 2 hours, if it's a meeting, for instance, we're narrating it so the other person knows what they're getting into. Like, there's nothing worse than being in an hour meeting and not knowing where you're going or like what the intentions are, because then you're kind of feeling a bit exhausted already. Like, oh, this is going to take an hour.
Okay, so Andy, in this chapter, you talk about how, what, and why is this process.
Yeah.
Where did this come from?
I think it was from painfully sitting in meetings with like some CEOs that I would mentor, and they'd go in and they'd have a task list and they would just presume the task list was enough. And what I'll often say is, and I mentioned it before, is I'm always getting the buy-in. So I'm always wanting people to be invited into something that I'm looking to achieve. So I was in a meeting like last week with a CEO of a company, and when he was speaking to the group, I was trying to sort of support him to say, before you go in, like, have them understand why you're doing any of this. Like, give them the reason, the why, and don't just say, okay, I need these things from you, because that would have been the easier way to have gone. And he, funnily enough, says, Andy, they already know why. Like, that was the thing that everyone always says, is they already know why. And then I said, listen, like, they may, but repeat it 10 times. Like, always make sure you're bringing them on the journey with you, getting what I would call the buy-in to what you're trying to achieve.
Okay. Can you give kind of an example of that was an example of where it went wrong? Do you have an example where he changed it and how he did that? Where it finally converted over to a better option or better opportunity?
In his case?
Yeah, or his case or another case.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's do the better option. I can always do, one from my own life that didn't go as well. But in his option, what I saw was that he wasn't able to make it personal. So he wasn't saying, I've been struggling with this. It's really not been easy for me, and I'd love it if you could help me here. This is how I see us doing it, and this is what I'd like the outcome to be. So he would basically, imagine your mind is just looking at an individual. And the hard thing is we don't realize that, like, unless we create the story in their head, they'll create their own story. So what we're doing is we're actually narrating whatever the hour or 2 hours, if it's a meeting, for instance, we're narrating it so the other person knows what they're getting into. Like, there's nothing worse than being in an hour meeting and not knowing where you're going or like what the intentions are, because then you're kind of feeling a bit exhausted already. Like, oh, this is going to take an hour. And if someone says, listen, this is what the problem we're trying to solve, and this is how I imagine us getting there, and that's the outcome. So in your mind, you almost have already like drawn a picture of what it's going to be that hour, and then you're bought into the process.
Mm-hmm. But okay, I mean, this is a business example.
That's a good, yeah.
Can you get, like, how do I use this with my girlfriend or my son? Or
Ronnie and I, every day, I almost will always share with Ronnie all the things that I'm actually wanting to get out of. For instance, I chose one day. I decided to take a 3-month trip to America. I took a shower, and at the end of the shower, I came out and I'm dropping my entire life, and I'm taking 3 months and going to travel America and do basically what's written in the Wounded Healer book. And when I came out, I could have said to her, hey, babe, I want to take a trip through America, and I'm just going to take 3 months off. And that wouldn't have gone down well, because Ronnie would have been like, hold on, where is this coming from? Why is this important? Like, what about me? And so when it hit, I also knew I'm doing this because it's been 30 years since my mom died. And I could get emotional because that's the feeling. And I ran away from that pain 30 years ago, and I never went back and allowed myself to feel the loss of her death where it happened. And so what did I share with Ronnie? That. I said, babe, there's something going on that I've just realized, that it's been 30 years since my mom died. And I'd just written the first book, it done well, and I said, it feels like I really want to do this. And what I'm looking to achieve is I want to touch thousands of people in America, because that's where the action happened and where I left when I was very young. and I want to do it in 3 months. I want to do a 3-month journey and give myself that time. And at the end, Ronnie didn't just say yes to, hey, you're going to go away for 3 months. She shared with me what the intention was, why I was doing it, and that brought us closer. So that would be an example of me having something in our relationship where if I presented it to her in a different way, there's no way it would have worked out. It wouldn't have been as bonding experience for us.
Okay. I mean, what I like about this is, this seems to be the first toolbox item that you've given, where it's like you actually fit it into this stuff when you're communicating, and this stuff is going to be getting you where you want to go there, while you're accomplishing a goal, while bringing somebody else or giving somebody else the opportunity to come along for the ride.
Yeah.
Now, it seems like you've been using this for a long time. Can you just tell us a little bit of where you started in this process and how you got here?
Unlike you, I'm not a big reader. So you'll understand stuff on a very scientific level. I need to fail 10 times. I need to it needs to go bad, and I need to think, what the hell just happened? And then I'm going to say, oh, they had no idea. So I think it was very much experiential. So when I was going into meetings and then I saw somebody speaking but not sharing with me what the intention was, I felt lost and confused. So I'm like, oh, apparently if you don't tell people what your intentions are, they'll be like me usually and not feel comfortable. So it really came just from the experience, just from a deep knowing from my own experience, then looking around and testing it and realizing, oh, this is kind of how it works. If you're really vulnerable and you share what your intentions are, people are attracted to you. They're like, wow, I get it. I know why he's doing this. And if you're not, then people are just, okay, I'll give you as much as you've given me, which is it's not usually going to really be the kind of passion that makes things feel good. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, I mean, what I really like about it through your journey is you really give a concrete, these 3 things, answer these 3 questions for the other person as a route to showing that vulnerability or bringing out that vulnerability. And I like this. Seems like easy, obvious, and no-brainer. Yeah. You can do it. You can remember it, right? It's not I think it's the simplest of all this difficult stuff. This is the simplest one, right? So I like it.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
And then I always have trouble with oversimplifying things because life is usually a bit more complex. So yeah, on some occasions I'll make it a little bit easier.
Cool. Yeah. Great, thanks.